All right. So again, we're here to talk to you today about search engine optimization. And the goal is to show you how to improve your online searchability. So just to start off, search is a very important topic. It's probably not the one that gets talked about the most because, in the grand scheme of marketing and being a business owner, search is probably the last thing that you think about. But hopefully by the end of the session, you'll
Right.
realize why search is actually probably one of the most important parts because it allows you to actually be able to put yourself in the most favorable position when somebody is potentially looking to find a service, find something that is local to you, or potentially even find your business. There's little tweaks that you can be making today that more than likely all of us haven't been taking advantage of, but hopefully by the end of this session we'll be able to do so. So just to start, search is very important because if nothing else, there are billions of searches happening every single day. If you're anything like me, you pretty much use either your Google Maps or your Google search for everything. And for better or worse, it's going to help you to be able to find information that's relevant to you in a quick fashion. But all of those search queries that you're pulling together show some kind of intent. And for business owners and as marketers, that's extremely beneficial to us because it helps us to get inside the minds of our potential customers or current customers. Because if you think about it, if someone is actually searching for something, you're getting a view into their mind of what they want to know about right now, or maybe interested in the future. And so knowing that we're doing a lot of this through Google, though Google is not the only search engine, but it is by far the most sophisticated and the most widely used, the goal is to be able to use that data as it relates to what people are searching for, the keywords, the phrases, all of that, to then be able to potentially remessage them or understand more about what they're looking for ultimately, which will allow you to potentially position your business as what they're going to be patronizing. So again, the goal here is really to understand not only why search is important, but how search is important. So moving forward, just some quick information as it relates to different types of searches. Again, none of these are necessarily things that you have to, commit to memory, but as it relates to just different types of searches, it is important just to understand kind of how people search traditionally. So I would say informational searches generally tend to be the ones where you're just asking information about a particular subject matter, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're trying to buy something or you're actually looking to take an action immediately. So for example, we're going to use stoves here. You can Google, how do you clean ovens? And if you're anything like me, you've probably typed in some of the most random searches ever that could be super specific and you still get some kind of a response. And so that's by design. So if you were to type in, how do you clean ovens? That's going to give you a whole list of either tutorials, videos, a number of things that are going to be pertaining to cleaning ovens, understanding why ovens need to be cleaned. You probably see a lot of times there's so much information that some of it is relevant, but then there ends up being a lot of information that isn't necessarily relevant. And so with that being an informational search, a transactional search actually takes it a step further. So you could do a transactional search when you're actually looking to make a purchase. So for example, if you're in the market for a stove, you may say, what's the best stove for under $1,000? And just that search query right there tells you a lot of things. It tells you budget, because this person would be looking for something that's under $1,000. And so if you are someone who sells products that are in the home appliances business, and you have a stove that is listed for over $1,000, you may not necessarily make it into the search. But the word best, stove, that all those combinations indicate some kind of transaction that is desired to be made. And so obviously that's a little bit different from an informational one because it does rely on someone potentially looking to make a purchase. And then after that, which is probably the one that most people use, is navigational searches. So Google Maps is literally all about navigational searches, and they've actually become a lot more sophisticated these days because what they've allowed you to do is actually use your Google Maps, whether the app or just on their website, as a way to be able to not only answer your search questions within the app, but then to potentially show you directly how to get there and a potential list of other competitors for additional ways that you can be able to find it. So think of navigational as someone who is looking for it in a specific destination. So this is going to be hyper local. or it's going to be about high relevancy. And so in this case, if you're looking for a stove, if you type in Walmart stoves, most of the search queries are actually going to come up for Walmart. But as we'll get into later in the presentation, you're actually going to potentially see some competitors of Walmart come up based off of just competitive keywords that are used. So hopefully that's all clear just as it relates to the different types of search types or search queries. But again, this is not necessarily anything that you need to commit to memory, but just understand that as a marketer, there's different types of search terms that are going to be used. And so you want to be able to make sure that your business is able to be searched and found across all of them, as many as possible. So just for starters, the term SEO, you probably hear it used ad nauseum, and you probably don't necessarily know what that means, and that's okay. So SEO stands for search engine optimization. And the overall definition of it is that it's the process of optimizing web pages and their content to be easily discovered by users searching for terms relevant to your website, which is a mouthful. But essentially what that means is you want to be able to make tweaks to how your site is to be found on the web, and specifically within search engines, to be able to make it more discoverable, or at least easier to discover. And so the term SEO itself actually relies on the algorithm, which again, Google is based on algorithms, but their software literally does a full scan in record timing. It even tells you at the top of your search query how quickly they found it, to be able to identify the relevancy of that search keyword or that search term that was used, and potentially your business. So for example, if you were using that same stove example, if you are a company that has stove in your name, you're going to have a higher relevancy to someone who's typing in best stove or stoves under $1,000. And so you're going to end up in that search query. However, if you have a stove product on your website, but your company name doesn't involve stove, nothing on your main website necessarily says stoves, but a stove is within your website, you're still going to search, or excuse me, end up within that search query, but you may end up a little bit lower. And so what search engine optimization does is allows you to be able to essentially kind of game the entire algorithm itself to be able to identify ways that, let's say with that same stove, even though stove may not be a part of kind of how you present yourself, you'll still have a higher likelihood of being able to rise closer to the top to give yourself a better chance to be able to have someone come to your site. And something important that I do want to mention here, I know in the previous sessions, we've talked almost exclusively about social media, different social media platforms. Everything as it relates to SEO is primarily going to have to do with a website. Not to say that social media platforms don't necessarily come up in search. So for example, if you were to type in, Talented 10th Collective or T10 Collective, it's going to give you first and foremost our website, but also our Instagram is probably going to come up. Our YouTube is also going to come up. And so in terms of everything that's associated with that search query, you're going to have, really a plethora of options that are going to come up. But everything as it relates to search engine optimization, you want to really be thinking more so for your website, because that essentially serves as your digital storefront. And so you want to be able to make sure that even if you primarily are selling via Instagram or any other social platform, your website is a complementary means. And in many cases, if someone isn't familiar with your Instagram, the first place they're actually going to look for you is going to be your website. So you want to be able to make sure that your website, regardless of how sophisticated it is as optimized as possible to really be able to capitalize on people who are either looking specifically for your business or looking for companies like your business. So moving forward, the $1,000 question: why is search so important to us as business owners? So as I mentioned, SEO is very important because in terms of things that you can do from a paid and an earned standpoint. So again, everything that we've talked about in the past as it relates to organic. When you hear us use the word organic, it's 9 times out of 10 going to be something that's free. And so SEO is something that you can do for free to be able to give yourself a higher likelihood of being able to get people to visit your site, as well as to potentially have them actually buy your product or service. And so because it is free, it's one of the most cost-effective things that you can do to help generate traffic to your site. We are going to cover in a little bit some other things that are from a paid standpoint. That's called SEM. but everything that you're primarily going to hear us talk about today is going to be free. It's going to be all about the optimization of it. And this is also important because many times with searches, people kind of stumble upon your site. They're not always looking for your site specifically or a site specifically. And so you want to be able to capitalize on also the randomness of the way people search. In the instance that someone is looking for your specific business, I would say 99% of the time, as long as your business name or the way you describe your business is very clear, you're always going to rise to the top or within the top 3 of those search queries. So you're pretty good there. But really what you want to be able to optimize is to make sure that you're able to also be effective for those random moments when your business may not necessarily be what's specifically looked for. And then finally, as I mentioned, SEO and search in general is just a perfect complement to everything that's happening on your other marketing channels. For example, your Instagram or your Facebook. And so again, this is something that in the past, it's okay if you've never really had it be a part of your marketing mix. But whether you've actively been using it or not, it is something that has helped you and in some cases could have potentially hurt you in terms of getting people to drive traffic to your site or potentially actually buy your product or service. So this is something that we want to be able to understand a little bit more of as we move forward, because it is something that should definitely be in your toolkit if it hasn't been today. All right, so I know I just mentioned SEO and SEM. So I just want to give you a quick understanding of what the difference between the two is. So what you'll see in the middle is essentially what your search engine looks like. And if you want to, feel free to go to Google right now while I'm talking and you can see kind of a real example. But essentially what you always see at the top, it's not going to be in green or in blue, but you're always going to see at the top with a little thing that says sponsored, you're always going to see the paid results at the top. And that's by design because SEM is all about paying to be able to rise higher within the experience. And so any placement that you're seeing at the top, depending on what you search in, you're likely going to either see an ad for that specific business if you type in a business, or in many cases, from a competitive standpoint, going back to the Walmart example, if you type in Walmart, there's some kind of likeliness that one of the paid ads that you're seeing on your search query is actually going to be for a competitor. So you may actually see a Lowe's there. You may see, another department store there, because what they're trying to do is capitalize on people who are interested in Walmart specifically, but they may be able to potentially be swayed to patron their business based off of a compelling offer or based off of the actual copy that's listed on that paid ad. So again, just keep in mind that everything that you're seeing at the top is going to be paid. But when we talk SEO and optimization, what you're really trying to do is optimize everything that you see that's organic below. And the way that you're really going to be able to give yourself a stronger chance is really by making sure that you can come up in relevant keywords. Most people don't click on don't search just one keyword. They're usually going to put a number of words in there. And so you want to be able to make sure that with every additional word, it increases your likelihood of being able to be found, especially knowing that there's so much paid positioning that's going to be at play. And so you have even more competition from people that you may not even necessarily know to be a competitor, but just based on the search words that were used, they could potentially be trying to almost steal share from you. So hopefully that's all clear as it relates to the difference between the two. But again, feel free to ask any questions in the chat. And so this visual also kind of just takes it an additional step lower. So again, think of everything at the top as free. Think of everything at the bottom, which is SEM, as paid. And so the tricky thing about SEO, because it's not a paid mechanism, it is going to take a little bit more time for you to actually see the benefits of any tweaks that you're making. But it will have longer lasting benefits to you as a business if you're able to kind of make some of the tweaks that we're going to talk about later in the presentation today or as soon as possible. But on the flip side, anything that's on a paid capacity, as you would imagine, is going to be instantaneous. But anything paid is also only going to last based on how long that campaign is. So if someone is running, paid ads on Google for say a month, they're only going to rise to the top for a month. And so depending on the length of time, if you do decide that you ultimately want to go the paid route, keep in mind that your campaign is only going to run for as long as you're spending, but search campaigns tend to run out of spend a lot quicker than anything you ever do on social because of just, as you saw in the first slide, the billions of search queries that are going on daily. And so there's just way more opportunity there, which makes it a benefit. But also in terms of being efficient with your spending, it also could potentially be something that you could see, you know, $20, $100 that you may set aside run out very quickly because so many people, whether regionally or nationally, are going to be using those keywords. So there is kind of a strategy and a science to doing that as well. And again, SEO, going to that third tile. The most important things to be able to understand what rises and kind of falls a little bit lower are going to be the page titles, the keywords, the page load speeds. Believe it or not, that is actually something that does impact how high or how low your site rises in a search query. And so, you know, if you're using Shopify or any of those kind of platforms for your actual web hosting, it will actually give you the speed score as it relates to how fast someone can get on your site. And just think about that as, you know, if you've ever been on some sites where they have so much graphics going on, they have music playing sometimes, they have videos, all these things that are happening before you ever really get to experience their site. While they're cool, they could potentially lead to a negative user experience because someone who just wants to come to your site, be able to either find a product or find a service relatively quickly, if your page is loading slower, that person may end up leaving because they just want to get to what they're looking for. And so that page load speed is also going to potentially affect how likely Google is to recommend someone to actually come to your site. And then finally, users tend to trust organic results over sponsored for obvious reasons, because there's no secret that anything that's paid is usually someone trying to force someone to see something by putting dollars there. But one of the beauties of SEM is that it does allow you to be a little bit more targeted in your approach because you are similar to all of the other paid advertising mechanisms that we talked about on social. SEM allows you to be able to be hyper targeted to a specific demographic, specific region, a specific type of person, someone who has made a certain action in the past. And so if you do decide to go the SEM route, that is one added benefit that SEO doesn't necessarily have as strong of a hold on. Does that make sense? I know I threw a lot at you. I'm not sure if there were any initial questions.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. Then we had another great question that came in regards to the ability for you as a business owner to see what advertisers are using from an SEM perspective to get in that top positioning. Is there a mechanism or a way to do that?
Yeah. So actually, while we're on this call, you can actually type in Google search. You can type it into Google Search Console. So it's a free platform that Google uses. It's tied to their AdWords product. And so Google AdWords is kind of its own session in and of itself, because everything that we're teaching you today is kind of the foundations of search. But Google AdWords is really when you want to take it to another level and really to be able to put spend against it, really to be able to understand how can you be as targeted, as strategic as possible. And so that console, it will allow you to be able to see in real time what some of the most popular search terms are as it relates to your business or just general searches. And based on that quality score and the volume of searches there, it does allow you to be able to see what a lot of competitors could be potentially using, because assume that, let's say you're in the fitness space, workout is going to be something that a competitor is going to use. Training, fitness, a lot of the most common words that are going to be associated with your category or with your specific business, more than likely your competitor is also spending against it. And so unless you're outspending them, more than likely you're not necessarily going to rise above them. But that platform does make it a little bit easier for you to be able to see just in real time what the search queries as it relates to a certain category or a certain word looks like. So I would encourage you in your leisure time, or even now, just take a look at either type in Google AdWords and it'll take you to a whole nother page, or even type in Google Search Console. And that Search Console is kind of going to be your main database for anything as it relates to search. Hopefully that answers the question though, but if there's any other questions, let me know. All right. So as I mentioned, prime positioning in search is really crucial, because statistically speaking, while there's pages and pages of search queries, depending on how broad or how specific the search term is, 33% of all search traffic. Now, these are numbers that are coming directly from Google themselves. 33% of all searches end up going to that very first search result. So that's why it is critical for you as a business owner to do everything that you can to get into that first or second or even third positioning, depending on the keywords that matter to your business. Because the difference between first and third, you have now, I suck at math, but as you go second to third and fourth, the likelihood of somebody clicking on your site, if they're a little bit lower, is going to diminish as you go. And so even the second one really only gets 18% of traffic. And so if you're not one of the first or second, the likelihood again of someone coming to your site is going to be lower, but your competitor's website could potentially even be above yours. And so you're going to have a hard time getting ahead of them and getting the traffic that is going to be critical to actually being able to drive revenue for you. So again, I won't labor on this too much, but I do just want everyone to understand that as it relates to search broadly, everything that you want to be able to do tactically is really with the goal of trying to get you to rise as high as possible as it relates to being in a search term. All right, so I know I had mentioned page titles and descriptions a little bit earlier, but these are some of the two most critical things as it relates to the search keywords that end up driving results. So in any kind of search engine optimization campaign, the most important first step is to actually understand what you're trying to optimize for. And so if you just look at anything that you're searching, that line in blue that you see is going to be the page title. And so page titles are going to be one of the first things that are going to determine the relevancy of a page as it relates to a keyword. And so if you have a blog on your site, this is why it's a great strategy for you to potentially have the page title be as specific as possible, because the more specific that your page header is, it's going to increase your likelihood of being able to end up in a search. But you also want to make sure that you're not too specific, that you're eliminating a percentage of the audience who may not necessarily be using the specific term as well. So there's a little bit of strategy to it, and I would definitely encourage you to kind of play around with these, but don't play around with them too much that you're potentially missing out or putting yourself at a disadvantage moving forward. But then secondarily, another very important thing is the descriptions. So on your website, depending on who you use, Shopify, Wix, Squarespace, any of those web hosting companies, a very important part of all of their capabilities is that they have a section as it relates to search engine optimization. I would encourage you to look if you haven't seen it before. Whenever they ask you to input page titles and page descriptions, this is what it ends up looking like. So that meta description, which I know sounds very complicated, really what the description is giving a little bit more context to what that page is. So using the Tesla example here, we're all relatively familiar with Tesla at this point. If you look at some of the keywords that they're using, they want to be associated with electric, the word solar, clean energy. These are words that they want to be synonymous for. And so even though their name is Tesla, they want to be able to reach people who are searching for anything electric cars, anything solar panel related, anything clean energy related, because that's going to increase the amount of potential traffic that they're getting. But also, as you'll see in their description, it also is writing in a very clear manner, almost as if they were giving their elevator speech. They're explaining exactly what that page is or their overall company does. And so I would encourage you to make sure that your meta description for your website is super clear and articulating what it is that you're providing, whether it's a service or your restaurant or your product, being able to understand that what they're seeing at the title as it relates to that meta description, that they match up and that someone will understand by looking at what that description is, why they should then click on your site. So think about that line as almost like your value proposition of why they should choose you versus a competitor. A very important thing, which I believe we had mentioned earlier in the call, is making sure that your website is as optimized as possible. And so this is something that maybe in the past, we weren't as reliant on. It was important to make sure that you have a strong website, but mobile wasn't necessarily as advanced, and a lot of traffic was actually coming from desktop. So that has actually changed in the recent years, where if you think about it, we do everything on our mobile website, or excuse me, on our mobile phones. And so even though our website looks very beautiful on desktop, that same experience, this is what it looks like on mobile. And so you want to be able to understand that you don't necessarily need to always prioritize the the design or the beauty from the desktop experience, because the mobile experience in many cases is really just about being able to have someone understand very quickly, what you're providing, what you do, what they can buy from you, and kind of what the value is that you're going to be providing. So I say all this to say, just take a second and ask yourself, in thinking about your respective websites, is your website sufficiently mobile optimized? Because if you think about your website as it relates to another business that you've ever been to, we've all had experiences where we've gone to a company's mobile experience and it was either confusing or hard to navigate. And so you end up either leaving or going to another site. So you want to be able to make sure that the experience that someone has is seamless on desktop, but it's also even more so seamless on mobile, because that ultimately is going to be the main thing that is going to be able to help you as a business owner, because overwhelmingly majority of folks are actually going to be searching and getting to your page from a mobile device and actually not from a desktop. And just finally, before we go into some of the more tactical things, one thing I did want to mention is that Google is your friend. You've heard us say this in the past. Google, even though sometimes they could be a little bit concerning because of the amount of data that they have for you, as a business owner, it is definitely your friend, because every new update that they come out with and every new product that they introduce is actually trying to help you help them, and vice versa. So think about it as a business owner. They have a very new product, which I would say within the last few years, and definitely since COVID, have done a lot to be able to identify ways that they can help business owners, and especially small business owners like us, to thrive on their platform, because they understand that Google, because so much of it is reliant on spend, the big players in the game and the biggest names in the game can always outspend us in terms of being able to get prime positioning. And that's why, as it relates to your Google My Business, if you've noticed, anytime you type in a search now, My Businesses and that interface that you're seeing on the left typically is going to be the first thing that pops up, or one of the first things. And that's almost an experience in and of itself. And so what we're seeing happen in the last year and change is that a lot more people are actually, rather than going to a company's website, they're actually learning a lot more, whether calling or actually providing, shopping the product directly from Google's interface within their My Business page. And so one thing that can be an immediate action item or homework assignment for you is to make sure that you've claimed and updated your My Business section. This is the website that you would do it. It's google.com/business. And what you want to do is make sure that not only you claim your page, but you have it be as robust as possible. There's a number of key qualifiers that they also have added. So if you are a woman-owned business, they have a section for that you can indicate. If you're a minority-owned business, if you're LGBTQ+, there's a number of indicators that if someone were to search for those, you'll be able to rise to the top as well. And so this is something that can be very beneficial, and also is free in being able to help your business be able to rise a little bit higher to the top as it relates to being on Google. Any questions as it relates to any of this before we go into some of the more tactical approaches?
Well, thank you, Matthew. So now, as Matt mentioned, we're going to transition over into how we've kind of typically ran things, right? The goal here is to give everyone on the call and the broader community information and background, but also, we want to make sure that we're being supportive and giving you specific action items and things and best practices and things you can apply to your business right away. So we want to make sure this is also very tactful. So this second half is doing just that. We're going to give you specific tips, tools, and recommendations that hopefully you can apply today or tomorrow to get things rolling and improving your SEO and your searchability. So I'll lead off with just saying that, there are multiple ways to improve your searchability. But if you don't get the basics right, if you don't get those fundamentals right, your chances of really being placed on that first page will become difficult. So we want to make sure that, as you're, again, building your digital storefront, right, and your toolkit, that SEO is something that you consider as well, because it's all kind of relates to each other. So with that said, let's get started. And I'd love to kick it off with just a quick statistic, kind of to really set the table. So HubSpot, which is a great kind of overall platform when it comes to CRM, customer management, and all of the likes, they do a lot of statistics and articles as well. And they show this statistic for this year, and that 75% of searches never go past the first page of search results. And that's a pretty profound statistic, right? So when you think about your experiences and how you use maybe Google or some other search engine as a user, how often are you actually going to page 2, page 3, page 4? I'm speaking personally, I rarely do. So it really does show and highlight the importance of effective SEO practices, right? So we want to make sure that everyone here on the call, is taking away the importance, but also best practices and things that you can apply so that you can make sure you're positioning your brand or your business to be as discoverable as possible. So that's kind of what we wanted to do to kind of set the table here. And let's get right into it. Let's start sharing some specific tactics and measures that you can apply. So this is something we kind of touched on, right? We touched on the varying levels of searches, right? You have your navigational, your informational, and your transactional. Well, one thing we want to make sure that you consider right away is to align your content with your search intent, right? And so what does that mean? You want to always make sure that you're keeping your search intent in mind as you're creating your content. So if you're a blogger, if you're a creator of content, and that's really kind of your brand or your business model or your monetization, then you're going to want to structure your SEO in a way that attracts more navigational searches if people are looking to learn. So if you look on the image on the left-hand side, you see the search how to make oatmeal cookies, right? And you see directly how different the results are. You have blogs that are talking about recipes. You have different recipe sites that have different ways in which you can create an oatmeal cookie. Not very transactional, but more informational. So, for myself, when I'm looking to figure out what temperature to cook something or a specific recipe, my searches are very navigational and informational. So they fall into this learn bucket, if you will. And then if you go to the right-hand side, you see buy oatmeal quick cookies. So that quick difference in the type of search bears a completely different result, right? So now you're seeing specific brands and companies that are selling cookies, right? You've gone into the transactional bucket. So keeping this in mind as you create your content, as you structure your site, you want to make sure that you're doing it with the right intent. So if you're selling product, you might want to be on the right-hand side of the screen to buy. But if you're primarily a blogger, a writer, a journalist, something of that nature, newspaper, you might want to fall more on the learn informational side. So these are things to consider, keywords to think about, ways to structure your site to make sure that you're also aligning your content with the search intent. So that's really the first thing we wanted to share. Moving on. So the next thing is to also make sure that you're writing compelling titles, title tags and meta description. So again, this is something we talked about in more of the overview section, but to be very direct, this is another big step, right? So you want to make sure that your title tags are done in a compelling way, that are succinct, concise, and drive the type of traffic and attention you're looking for. And same thing with meta descriptions. So the methodology which you use your words, how you write the copy, these are all important things. So looking at title tags on the left-hand side, this is a direct example, right? So it's the tag, it's the top headline that you see in your search browser, right? So here's an example of the 8 best software programs for a small business. This is a search that, frankly, we do. And I imagine there are a lot of folks on the call that do as well. So that title tag is what you see at the top. And things to consider when you're creating your title tags or when you're trying to structure them for your SEO is to understand and include the target keywords, right? So if you're a software company and you consider yourselves the best, you should probably put that in there. If your market is really small business, putting that in there makes sense, right? You want to make sure that the title also matches, again, the search intent. So if you're looking to be more on the discover side, you have to write in a way of discovery. If you're looking for it to be more transactional, you have to change your language as well. You want to avoid creating duplicate tags. You want to make sure there's no duplication involved as well. So try to avoid, overlap in the type of title tags that you would use, right? That's another big point, because duplication really is not going to be an effective means for you to fit better within the algorithm. And then you want to avoid overly stuffing your keywords, right? You want to be succinct, you want to be direct, you want to make sure that you're selecting the right ones, but you don't want to overstuff it, because again, that will actually hinder your algorithmic positioning as well. Google will pick up on things like that. And again, a word we've used consistently throughout the workshop, that you want to be descriptive but concise. So you want to get to the point, but you don't want to be too lengthy at the same time. So these are all things to consider from a title tag perspective. Looking at meta descriptions, So that, as the screenshot there on the right-hand side suggests, it's really that description that falls right underneath your title tag. So what are some things that you should do to create more effective meta descriptions? Well, first, make sure that they're unique for each page, right? You don't want to be redundant. You want to make sure that you're putting in the time and the effort to making sure that descriptions are unique. Right? And then also you want to use action-oriented copy. So your title tag is drawing the audience in, and then the meta descriptions itself is what's actually driving the action, right? So you want it to be kind of call to action-esque. You want to include, again, here keywords as well. So your target keyword should be here. So, the ultimate guide, right? That's a good keyword, right? If you're looking, and that's a blogging go-to. Having those direct information and calls to action is very important. And then matching your intent as well, right? Always aligning your intent and providing an accurate summary. You want to make sure the summary that you're including in the meta descriptions is accurate and that it's fully reflective of your brand or your business. So then move on to the next one. Okay, so optimizing your images is another big one. And there's a lot here, so what we've tried to do is break it down in a few steps. But it is a very important thing. We talked about the experience of your website, right? How slow, how fast, all plays a role in your SEO, and also just your overall user experience. So you want to make sure that even within the images that you're using, it's not so simple as to find a good image and post it. A lot of times you want to take it a level further, right? So we've broken down a few steps here, and I'll start from the left and I'll go across. So first you want to choose the best file fit. And so I've included here a little bit of a graphic, right? And some different options that you select, and also some of the considerations when you select that type of image. A little bit of an eye chart. So, this content will sit on YouTube and will be provided to you via PDF. So you'll have it there to look at. But, the three main buckets of formatting when it comes to images, without getting too detailed, is really your PNG files, your JPEG files, and then your WebP files. These are all just three different formats for your images, and each of them offer specific kind of benefits that might sway you to select one over the other. Right, so WebP file images tend to be a kind of a jack of all trades, and are great because they're small but provide great quality. But if you're looking for a high res type of image, you might want to go with a PNG file. And then also, if you're even trying to get larger files, you'd likely go JPEG. But these are all things to consider because really the trick is to have balance. You don't want too many images that are oversized because it can reduce the speed and also the performance of your website. So be intentional and be very proactive when selecting images, making sure that that the content you're putting it in on your site it makes sense and you're optimizing it. So first step, choosing the best file format. Next one is to compress your images. So, in a lot of cases you can upload them right there, but there's also opportunity to compress them, to make them more concise, more optimized. So there's what we've done here is included a few little free tools on the web that allow you to do that. So if you went to search any of these web apps, add-ons or sites, they're all free and they all give you opportunity to shorten or compress your images so that the images that you're using maintain great quality, but are allowing you to optimize your site as best possible to improve your speed. So that's the second step, compressing your images. Now, next is also providing alt text for your images. So the next level is right after you selected the great photo, which we've actually talked about in prior sessions. And now you're picking the file format, you're optimizing it for its size or compressing it. You also want to include alt text. So what does that mean? What is alt text? Well, in the background of your site, you can add alt text attributed to each of your photos that allows it to improve its searchability and discoverability. So as you can see here, we have an example of a brownie. So this brownie sits on, for example purposes, let's say it's on a blog, a food blog. And I know we have some chefs on the line. So imagine you have a site which kind of highlights some of your recipes that you might be featuring on your catering menu or your restaurant. You can include a compelling image that you've selected, formatted, and compressed. You put it on your site. And now you want to add some alt text to your site as well. So you can see here, some of the alt text is we've done a not so good and a good one. So the not so good one is just brownies, right? But a good one is chocolate brownies with strawberries. So you're having a little more description, right? Because you want to make sure you're detailing the image to its best ability, and you're really highlighting all of the features within the image. And that way you're including more language to improve your discoverability as well, because someone might have you think strawberries for dessert, and they search strawberries, and now look, your image with strawberries and brownies pop up. So being kind of comprehensive and intentional in your thoughts as you create your alt text is important. So that's step 3. And then lastly is a very interesting feature is lazy load for your images. And so the best example here I've included is like Pinterest to kind of give it a more direct example. But lazy load is really, in the event that you have to have a lot of photos, right? If you're very image heavy on your site. So if you're a blog that has a lot of content, what you can do is you can include a lazy load image where when you pull your site up, your images actually don't show right away. But then give it like a second or two, and then all of a sudden in kind of a swift manner, they all appear. So that's another thing you can consider as well. So lazy load feature. So here within Pinterest, you'll notice when you go to Pinterest, you'll see a lot of the images are kind of like blacked out or grayed out, but then as you experience it, as you scroll, they'll begin to appear. So that's kind of your lazy load feature. Another way to kind of trick the website in a way in which you improve your speed and not drown down your performance. So that's all about optimizing your images. Okay, so next is to use internal linking. So kind of sometimes can be overlooked, but is actually a really effective way in just like creating better SEO practices, but also just better website performance, is having links within your site. So internal links are very imperative because they establish the information hierarchy. And your website can also help Google to get a deeper understanding of your content. So the more effective ways that you use linking, it can not only better positioning you for algorithmic performance in your SEO, but also it's giving Google more information to understand the hierarchy so that they're able to promote your content better, right? Google can be used as a friend. You just have to understand kind of how you game it to a certain degree. So here on the left-hand side, what I've tried to include is just a couple examples of good internal linking and poor internal linking. So on the left-hand side here, you see a web page with various pages, right? So think of it as home, about us, content, contact us, right? Four kind of standard pages. What you can do is you can link them to each one. And those landing pages and pages also can speak to each other, right? Because if you have content that I guess can connect and cross-sectionalize with other areas, make sure that you're embedding that type of hierarchy and connection. One, it's good for your experience, right? Because you can navigate as a consumer more swiftly, but also it gives Google the understanding of what connects, what speaks to each other. And then all goes into internal linking and also improved SEO. So just another step to think about. So when you leave here today, go back to your site, kind of look at your website and kind of really understand and really break down how your internal links work now. And then see if there's ways in which you can maybe improve it. And a lot of these don't have to be so cumbersome. They can be done pretty swiftly. So something else to consider. And then improving your website user experience. I know it's a catchy phrase to say website experience. I know we had some folks in the chat that talked about how difficult it is to work with your UI. And we get it. It's not easy. I know us personally at T10, we spent a lot of time at the beginning of the pandemic really kind of going through our digital storefront, if you will, like our experience, how people can consume us or see us. And we had to spend a lot of time really thinking through our user experience. What do we want it to be? What do we want to say? And it's an effort, right? It takes time. So I really do recommend that for you as well, is to make sure that you're thinking about your experience on your site, because there's multiple facets to it, right? Not only do you make the experience itself better for the people that are going to your site, but it all plays into SEO as well. So here we've just broken down a few things to consider, and hopefully these are things you can directly do today. And the first is really using subheadings. Here I've included an example of the Spotify website because they actually do a great job with using subheadings. What you can see here in big bold, it says it's playtime, right? Speaks to a clever way to speak to kind of what they do as an app. But then under that, they have a subheading that gives a little more detail and context, right? And that subheader and that subheading rather can do a lot of effective things. It has the keywords and associated terms that can improve your searchability, right? And then it also gives you the opportunity to give more context, but not disrupt your user experience. So think of subheadings as a great effective way to do that. So, really kind of do an audit of yourself and look, do I use subheadings, and where can I see myself including them? Next, you want to make your content visually appealing. Now, this is very subjective, but I think we can all agree that the more visually appealing a site is, the more likely you are to drive traffic, and also the improvement in your SEO can be. So really think about how you can have a more visually appealing and visual experience for your audience that can hopefully draw them in, right? So here I've included an example of a site that it does a good job of using subheadings, having a big, bold, but concise statement that leads you in, and then some call to action with some buttons. I think it's an example that might not be for everybody, but it just, just to kind of give context to the idea that visual appealing content should be a thing that you consider. And then also, we've fallen in love with pop-ups over the years, but you also want to make sure that you avoid using intrusive ones. So you don't want to use pop-ups. Pop-ups are great for promotion, for call to action, for including your email listserv or your subscribers. But at the same time, you don't want to do it at the expense of your user experience. So making sure that you're being, considerate, thoughtful on the type of pop-ups that you use. So here we've included some examples of really some like to-dos. So examples of intrusive pop-ups that can disrupt your experience. You want to make sure that you're not doing anything that really just stops what the user is doing, right? Because you could almost disrupt a sale. So you want to make sure that you're not being counterproductive to your business, but you're amplifying it. So finding maybe more clever, more unique, and more transparent ways to use pop-ups versus using ones that might disrupt the user experience. So just think about that. Another thing to think about as you reflect on your site and your experience is to say, okay, I'm using pop-ups. If I am, are they disrupting my experience? If I'm putting myself in the shoes of a consumer, does this disrupt or how I might want to navigate or learn about this brand or even buy something? So always think about that as well. And then lastly, use white space. Something, normally not emphasized enough, but I think when you look at studies, you look at research, you find that having white space, having blank space, oftentimes creates a more welcoming and user-friendly experience for your website. So find ways to create that space, whether it's, trimming down your content, being concise in certain areas where you can be, but try to be bold, try to be concise, and also try to include more white space because it does add certain elements to the experience. And I think we're getting to the end here, but you want to also making sure that you're including keywords in your URL. So, it's another thing that might be overlooked when you're trying to build your URL or think through it, but it's definitely a great tactic to use because again, it just all feeds into your searchability. So you want to be very intentional with this as well. So a site's URL structure should be simple. It should be as simple as possible. So consider organizing your content and constructing it logically, right? So that the manner makes sense to the consumer. So you want to, when possible, readable words rather than long ID numbers, right? So you want to avoid, long ID numbers that just don't make sense to a user. So where you can avoid that, try as best you can. You want to also use short, so here's some 3 bullet points to kind of drive it really home, but use short URLs, use keyword-rich URLs, right? So try to include target keywords in your actual URL, and then remove any unnecessary stock words. So, making sure that's clean and succinct. So really just getting right to the point. So on the right-hand side of the screen, I've tried to include a graphic here that kind of breaks it down a little bit better, but 1 to 2 keywords per URL, include the keywords there, and it gives you a couple examples, right? So here you have a site that says site.com, my first keyword plus another, blah, blah, blah. And then you have a better one that's just more succinct, very clean, to the point, right? So you want to try to be that green check. You want to try to be as concise and optimized as possible. So just another thing to consider when we're thinking about everything digital facing to your audience. All right. And then what might be surprising, but might not be at the same time, is that in certain cases, publishing long form content still works, right? So what's been found in certain studies and research of late is that longer articles on your website, so posts that have 3,000 plus words, can result in 3 times more traffic and 4 times more shares and 3.5 times more backlinks. So all that to say, what we're really seeing is that, this is very relevant to the blogs, to folks that have something to say, they're sharing content. I would suggest, if it's something that you're able to do, something that's feasible, something that works with your brand, having blog posts occasionally for your users is a great way, because what we're seeing is that the long form content still works. So having a blog that's rich, that speaks to your audience, speaks to your brand, makes sense, fits with your overall approach, still works. And here we've included some graphic reputable site that just show just that, right? So when you look at that 3,000 plus mark, you see how much more unique page views that it's getting. You see how much more backlinks it's getting and shares. The more content, the more words, when it makes sense, can work for you. So if it's something you've considered or you've started but really haven't really gone full force at, really think about that. Think about ways to integrate long form content on your site and see if it works, If you got something to say it. And then that really brings us to our Q&A section. So I did see that the chat was going, so I'm sure there's been a lot of questions Matt's been on top of, but we love to open up the forum now, and we've been intentional about creating this time for everyone to share. So feel free to unmute yourself, and if you do have questions, we're open to and having a discussion. So I'll turn it over to the audience here.
I'm curious to hear from both of you. We're actually in the process of creating a new website, and our mobile is definitely not optimized in the correct way. So I just was curious to hear your thoughts on, like, are there a few things that we should really be looking out for as we create this new site?
Let's go. What do you think, man? You want to take this one, or you got it?
Yeah, I'll take this one. Sorry, I was on mute. And hey,
It's all
Stefan.
good.
I think I would definitely advise you to start with the mobile experience and then have the desktop experience almost mirror that, or really expand upon that. So just think about it in terms of priorities. I would prioritize making sure that the mobile experience is as quick hitting, as informative, and as transactional as possible. Obviously, Heath is a nonprofit, but if there are certain actions that you want someone to be able to take, I would think of it through the lens of mobile first, and then be able to make sure that your desktop experience really just expands on that.
Maybe just to piggyback off of what Matt just said, I'm a data guy. So when I think of building something and making some decisions on marketing efforts and brand, I'd also think about the information that might be at your disposal already. So if you have any statistics, like that might come from a Google Analytics, which is like a free platform that you can kind of link to your site, that gives you information on how users are you. So are they, where are they coming from? Are most of the users coming to your site right now? Are they mobile users? Are they desktop users? Information like that can be very helpful as well in helping shape how you might structure your mobile site too. So I would also encourage you, what Matt said is spot on, but maybe even take it a step further. Also see what kind of data is out there to maybe help even frame your decision making even better, because you might be surprised at what you see. And it can help maybe inform kind of like how you build a mobile site. I do agree, mobile is clearly the hot spot and the place to be. People are on it all the time, but you might find something statistics wise that says like, hey, mobile in this way might even be better too. So I encourage you to look at the data you might have available as well.
Thank you both.
Yeah, no
problem. Keep them coming. Any other questions?
Hi, I have a question.
All right.
Hi, I was in and out different meetings, but I liked the beginning part about SEO and the connecting your website. My question is, I just created and signed up for and paid for Google Workspace. Is that completely different than Google Analytics, or does it provide a shell for you to do your Google Analytics and your Google console, search console stuff? And so I signed up for it, but I'm still learning so much about it. So I'm sorry if the question seems a little, not.
No. Trust me, Rob. That's a great question. I'm sure someone else on the call had it as well. So think of Google Workspace as almost like your literal workspace for all of Google's products. So you'll be able to almost use it as your home base for your business, where within there, you'll have your Gmail, obviously. You'll be able to essentially use all of their products within that one suite. And within there, you'll also find AdWords, My Business, a lot of the things that we've already mentioned on this call will all be housed within that Google Workspace.
Thank you.
You're
It's just hard to understand how to connect that it's not, that Google Analytics is separate from the Google Workspace. Is that correct?
No, so I would actually say Google Analytics is still a part of it. within that experience, it'll still show you analytics. It essentially is going to serve as everything that you as a business owner potentially could want to know about who's coming to your business, how your business is being visualized or presented, and also ways that you could potentially optimize your business. So analytics is definitely a key part of that. I would just look for within there, they have either a Google Analytics tab or a specific section that will explicitly say that Google Analytics is there. So don't think about it as something separate. Think about it as bringing all their products into this one place.
Exactly. So Robin, it's kind of like a hub in a sense, right? So there's an icon that usually shows that has like a grid format. You click that and it gives you all the slew of the apps. So think of it almost as a hub for all the products that fall under the Google umbrella, analytics being one of them. So once you click there, you'll probably have to do just a little bit of work just to connect it. And they make it pretty user-friendly, so it's nothing too comprehensive. But once you're there, you can then tap into that element as well. And if you have any questions or about that, feel free to contact us. We'll make sure to, I think our last page here has our contact information. But we'll also try to get in the chat. So,
thank you so much. Yes, and I might contact you when I'm working on it.
No problem.
So no problem.
I have a question. This is Stacy from Inside Out Tours. Can you comment on the use of blogging in terms of SEO? I have been thinking about making that one of my primary ways of drawing traffic to my site, and I just wanted your opinion on that.
Yeah, so blogging is actually something that you've probably seen a lot more these days. Think of blogs as more real-time content, or at least more relevant content as it relates to a certain time period, or more of like an update for your business, as opposed to just what your general website's about. So for example, not knowing too much about your business, if you have your website that is really just like your storefront, this is everything about what your company does. But your blog is content around what you're doing in real time. Here's an update on a program that we're doing, a new product that we're selling, or a new experience. If you've been in the press, think of the blog as an opportunity for someone to be able to see pretty quickly what the latest update that your business has been about. Whereas your general site is still more informational as it relates to kind of what your business provides.
I'm a little bit confused. So our blog is on our general site. How are you making that distinction? Like, what is the distinction?
Yeah, so the blog would still be within the site. It's just a section where someone clicks on blog, and in each post is going to be about a topic as it relates to something that you've recently done. It still should live within your site, but just in terms of the traffic that you're driving to, you can drive someone, use that URL to drive traffic directly to the blog, so that someone can, you can say on social, check out our new blog post about a recent activation that we did, or a recent product release, where someone will still be able to go to that blog post and then be able to still, visit your larger site. But in terms of the experience, it's more immediate and it's more relevant to what's going on now, as opposed to just broadly about what your business is providing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I guess it's all the same, right? Whether I have it in like my general site, sort of the keywords, or I put it in my blog, they're both just driving traffic to my website. Does it make a difference? Is there the way it's done?
No. Oh, Donna, maybe you want to ask.
Yeah. So if I think where Matthew's going is like essentially just I think the suggestion was to have it almost like as one of a page to your website, right? So where you might have about us, contact us, blog would just be one of those other pages. Just in the concept of keeping it all centralized. But I think maybe a bigger point to your question as well, outside of just kind of positioning, is that I think you're on the money when it comes to blog posting. So I definitely would encourage you, because there's certain statistics that are showing that the long form content is actually resulting in more page views, more sharing, and more. So if it's something that's kind of in your wheelhouse and something that you're looking to explore, we can definitely, I think if your question's also to do it, I'd say go right ahead and definitely prioritize it as part of your overall kind of visual experience, or I guess marketing experience, the branding experience, because we're seeing that blog is a great way of drawing an audience, but also creating more traction to your site. So I think it will all feed each other. So we definitely suggest that.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Keep the questions coming. Anything else?
Yeah.
Don't be shy.
Hi, Terry. Carrie Wisdom from Harlem Network News. I had a question. Do you know if there's any grants or funding for businesses that are not a nonprofit to help with marketing, or if Google or anybody has anything like that?
I know there's a lot of programs out there. One of the things we're looking to start to do is be better about collecting that information and sharing it out with the community. So, but to answer your question, I'm not sure. I know there's definitely a lot of stuff out there. I think specifically in the last year during the pandemic and with everything going on, Google and other companies have been very proactive in trying to offer different programs through free credit for advertising or support workshops and things of that nature. So it's definitely out there. So I would encourage you to kind of search out there, but off the top of the head, outside of a nonprofit, I know there was stuff that was running like at the beginning of the height of the pandemic, so sometime last summer. I'm not sure if some of those are still underway, but yeah, I'd encourage you to take a look. And if we come across anything personally, we'll make sure to share.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Because I know Facebook
Yeah.
had something like over the summer, some kind of
Exactly.
competition
Yeah.
or something,
Yeah,
but it
yeah.
was really like for people that had like huge amounts of following. So I think it
Mhm.
kind of really knocked out folks that were at the beginning. And then also if there are just different courses that these people are having, like that Zoom is having. I know Zoom has a few, but it's to me often difficult because it's hard to get to anybody via telephone. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it's like a whole chat thing, which takes a whole nother level to it. And, if you have a question that's more like skewed, it's difficult.
Oh yeah,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
Sure. Definitely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, of course. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
So this has to do with YouTube. YouTube is a search engine as well. Is that correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. So I post a lot of, or I'm starting to post more videos. So my question is there a way that I can either, I'm not sure exactly like how to get the videos to rank higher when people are searching for the particular content that I put out. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, you got that one, man.
Yeah. So YouTube, because it's a product of Google, it is going to still factor into kind of the keywords, but within YouTube itself, that's actually a great opportunity for you to use their AdWords product, because the AdWords product, obviously a lot of it is paid, but some of the things that you can do more immediately, even though some of them are paid, is that within AdWords, it will allow you to see the searches that people are getting to your page from.
Yes.
And then what you can then use that data to be able to say, okay, if people are coming to my page, I'm making it up. I'll use the sports example again, or excuse me, fitness example. If you have a fitness page and you see that people are coming to your page because of the term Harlem fitness or Harlem workouts, then you understand that a lot of your traffic is local. And then also you understand that people want to come for workouts or they want to see workouts. And so that gives you an opportunity to then either put spend against rising higher in those keywords, or to be able to identify other complementary keywords, which AdWords actually does a very good job of suggesting additional keywords that can give you more scale. So it doesn't always have to mean spending money, but what the AdWords platform does do is give you a lens into kind of what's taking place to date, and understand like what are some suggestions of other words that can help you get a little bit more scale based off of the relevancy to your business as well as relevancy to the existing traffic that you have.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and even and to add on to that, we've we supported a client and partner of ours a campaign on YouTube for video content, and another great benefit is it's not just transactional in the sense of, okay, I put it up, I get better spend, but you aggregate a lot of information that you can turn around and use for your business. So you can understand how long people are watching your videos for, at what point are they typically clicking off. So it gives you information not only to understand traffic, where it's coming from, but also even just the performance of your videos, which can help how you might, structure your content moving forward. So it's a great tool just to experiment with, and that can give you a lot of insight into kind of how consumption is all happening as well.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem.
Good morning.
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 I'm new to all of this. So it's like some of this stuff is Spanish to me because I don't have an understanding. Where can I go to continue to get this more information like this so that I can get a better understanding? Because I know I'm not going to get all of this in one setting.
It's okay. So in addition to this exact presentation being available on our YouTube, a lot of the previous sessions that we've done are also on our YouTube, and I can drop that link in here right now for you. But again, don't feel like it's all Spanish. I know it's going to feel that way to you initially, but the whole point of this course is that we want to be able to go deep into individual topics like this one. Obviously, search is a little bit more complex. So definitely don't feel like you're at a disadvantage, because it's something that, even I, who have been doing it for years, there's still some nuances to it where I'm like, wow, I don't think I get that at the first time. But with that said, each session is meant to really provide you with that information. So I would encourage you to, rewatch this one, go watch some of the previous ones, as well as, there's going to be a lot of, if there's a certain term that you see us mention on any of the slides, or there's a certain topic, I would actually use Google to then just search more information about that term as well, just so you can go deeper into each individual topic. It's not something that you're going to learn overnight, and definitely not in a week or for a month, but it is something that with time, and with each time that you hear it, you're going to become more familiar with it. And the products that Google comes out with actually are intentionally making it a little bit easier for small businesses to be able to understand a little bit more. But something also that can be a help for you is actually YouTube videos. You'd be surprised what you can learn, even if you type in on YouTube, SEO 101 or how to run search ads. There's a lot of very, very informative and instructional videos out there that you can really learn a lot and go a lot deeper than we're providing even in this hour and a half. Think about that as like complementary material to kind of accelerate your learning, but definitely don't be hard on yourself and think that you can't learn it or you have to learn it overnight, because these are topics that take some time, months and years to actually master.
And I'm also a non-for-profit. I'm an AIDS survivor, so I'm an activist and an advocate, but also
That's
do
awesome.
music industry showcases. So my website can'tbesilenced.org is up. So I started looking at my website saying, "Oh, I have to get my people to step the game up."
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you.
I'm gonna drop in.
Excellent.
Yeah.
No, you're welcome. And I will drop in that link right now.
Yeah. And then I think also, Nicole is here on the line. They have the content on their YouTube as well. And we have all our past materials. So, if you have questions or, you want to kind of go back and see some previous content, just hit us up, let us know, and we'll share what we have.
I just wanted to comment too, Maria, you're not alone. Part of the reason why we partnered with the guys, Talented 10th, was because we saw this as one of the biggest needs in the community, both with the small business community and just in general, to just understand the digital landscape. Obviously the pandemic has made it that much more apparent that to compete, business owners needed this knowledge. But this is going to be an ongoing learning. This won't be the only time the guys do a workshop. The response has been really strong, but it is very dense in terms of the information, especially if you're learning it all for the first time. Most of us, myself included, have realized how little we actually knew. We thought we knew what we were doing until we see how much we weren't doing after, this is the 5th session with these guys. And there's just so much to this. It's its own knowledge, expertise that we are trying to all catch up. So just know that we're going to be here. We're going to continue to provide this information. Sometimes you got to hear things 3 times for it to really settle in. And so, like they said, we have been posting each week the Zoom sessions that include and the presentations on their site, on Harlem Park to Parks YouTube. It's also on Harlem Park to Parks website. So if you miss a session, you can go back, you can download, just so that we are just like giving everybody access to the information in the way that they can digest it. Because what is great is these guys have provided the depth that most of the businesses told us, myself and Morgan, in our meetings with Harlem Park to Park businesses, that they haven't been able to get a lot of depth in the social media courses that have been offered during the pandemic. It's like cursory level, a 2-hour session where they're giving you all of the information about social media in one session. And as we have now experienced going through 5 sessions, there's just no way possible to learn everything that these guys have been teaching in 5 sessions, to get the full range in a 2-hour webinar, which is the kind of information that's been kind of during the pandemic. People have been popping in and out of different workshops, and there's been a lot of free workshops and webinars offered, but this is really like going to school in social media and digital marketing. And so, but even for me, I'm sitting here and it's thank God these guys are as good as they are, at least breaking it down, but then having the decks and the Zoom to revisit each week, which is what I try to do. And I still am like, good grief, I need someone to do this for me. I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get to a point where I can do it as well as it should be done, but at least understanding if someone else is doing it for you, then you at least understand what they're doing for you so that you can direct them. Because that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. I don't know that I'll ever be the one fully managing Harlem Park to Park social media or even my own, but I need to understand how it works to be able to direct. So we're in this together, and hopefully you'll be able to continue. We've got 3 more sessions after this, right? This is 5.
Yep.
So we have 3 more because it was an 8-week program. And, so hopefully you'll join us. It's every other Tuesday. I don't know if this is your first one. I think I've seen your name. You've been on others, right?
Yeah, in and out. But this is excellent. This is excellent.
Right?
Excellent.
Great.
Even though I think it's Spanish, I learned a lot. Keywords, making sure my keywords are right.
Yeah.
Google Analytics. I keep hearing that, so I'm going to do some research. But this was excellent. Thank you. Excellent.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Great to hear.
I'm glad to hear. Yeah, glad.
Right.
I have a quick question. This is Rebecca. So you talked earlier about putting keywords in the URL. You said something about that. So are we talking about changing the URL of, like, let's say a home page or like a shop, like when things are like super basic like that, like just the basic bones, can you give some sort of guidance about how to put keywords in there? I don't know what I would change for my homepage. That I'm so confused. If you can just give another example.
Yeah, no problem. So that would be, so not your homepage. So like your main pages, like your obviously your front page, your shop page. Those are pages that you should definitely have shop now or shop. Homepage. Make sure that the titles for those are very clear and very direct. But what I think when Donald had mentioned that, I think what he was saying is if there's any additional pages within the within your site, I would make sure that if there's an about us section, make sure it says about us. Make sure that the actual headers align with the URLs of the pages that they're taken to. So think about it as making sure that the URL is very simple and clear. Sometimes even the URL that I just gave you for our YouTube channel, I just noticed that it has all these characters. So one thing I'm gonna try to do as a follow-up is just shorten it so that it could be /channel/T10 Collective. That way it makes it a little bit easier to navigate, because for someone who is trying to navigate your site quickly, if they want to figure out where your homepage is, they want to be able to, select /homepage or /shop. So I think that was kind of the nugget. It was less about overall doing an overhaul of your titles. It's more so making sure that each of the pages within your experience are as concise and as clear to understand as possible. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
No, no problem.
Question for her?
Is UI considered part of marketing or a combination of web design? I would say it's probably more so aligning to web design. And for everyone to understand, UI is just your user interface. So that's kind of like the way your website looks, how smooth it is, how relatively simple it is. Whereas UX is kind of the user experience. So how easy is it to navigate? So those are things that I would probably say align a little bit more to web design, but your marketing should also lean into that. It's not necessarily a byproduct of it, but you want to make sure that your marketing is driving the user experience, the UX, to be as seamless as possible, have as few steps as possible, because ultimately that is going to help someone to actually convert. But the UI is just, think of your website as a UI. Think about it as like that hub that represents your business. And so you want to make sure that obviously it's as visually pleasing as possible, but you also want to make sure that it's as easy to navigate as possible.
I have an additional question. This is Stacy from Inside Out Tours.
Hey,
Can
Stacey.
you please clarify when you would use strategically Google Ads versus SEM?
So Google Ads is a form of SEM. So SEM is the tactic. So that's just search engine marketing. That just means that it's paid. And then Google Ads is Google's product to be able to allow you to do that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. And then the question from Rebecca, will we have a Google Analytics session? So I do believe, Donnie, correct me if I'm wrong, I do believe Google Analytics is one of the sessions, if not the next one. But if it is something of interest, we can do a deep dive into Google Analytics with one of these sessions, if that's something that everyone thinks is beneficial.
Yeah, definitely can. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to look back at the calendar. I'm not sure if it's in the books right now, but we do have a little flexibility. So if it's something we wanted to add in at the tail end, we definitely could try. So yeah, Rebecca, if that's something you're interested in, for sure.
So analytics will be the next one. And then the final two will be building your following and the newsletters. And then we'll be done. Wow. It's like the time is going so fast.
Yeah, it's flying. It's flying.
Just in time to start promoting for summer. All of our businesses are going to be that much stronger as a result of this. So, yeah, if that's it, if that's everything, we can conclude the session. Look out for our emails. Let people know that we're here, and we'll be back in 2 weeks.